Oh, hello, everyone. The music stops. That's my cue to start. So, hello and welcome to Offsite's fifth commencement ceremony. So, thank you all for coming here today. I think to kind of illustrate what Offsite has become, very early on when Hector approached each of us as instructors to basically sell his dream for creating Offsite, he basically approached us and said, "Oh, I want to start a design school." And for myself, and I think probably for the other instructors too, my first reaction was, that's fun. Good luck with that," because that's a very, very ambitious task. But having gone through this now fifth time, five times, and just given the incredible energy that every student has brought, seeing students actually go out into the field and get jobs, and actually begin to take what they're learning in offsite and applying it to the real world, it's really, I think, proven this kind of idea, and at the same time, been very, very rewarding to see grow. So it's been an amazing journey, and it only gets better each round. So thank you for coming and joining us with it. I think I forgot to mention myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is Dom, or Dominic Montante, and I'm an instructor at Offsite, and I will be leading us through today's ceremony. So take my hand and join me. So again, for those of you joining for the first time who may not exactly understand what Offsite is, basically began as this experimental design education initiative, or for lack of better word, school, um, to basically bridge the gap between what students were learning in school, which in our opinion did not seem to be sufficient enough for what the industry was demanding of them. And so we basically took those insights that we garnered from our connections via industry, and then took those and put them into a school program where you get those skills that you need to thrive in the job and become much more employable. Um, and so we have been doing that now for 2 years. I think we began in fall of 2020, and now we're in fall of 2022. So it's been an amazing ride. And to dive in a bit deeper, we are currently separated into two tracks at Offsite. There's Cohort 1, which is a 12-week foundational skills program. And so basically, our target audience is those people who want to begin working in design or begin playing with the idea of getting design education, but not necessarily with committing all the way to a 4-year program. And so here, students begin to learn the skills of sketching, making prototypes to validate and test their ideas, play with storytelling, and kind of begin to understand what the design process is. And so it's open really for anyone that wants to pivot into industrial design, whether it's, say, a high schooler looking to, say, sign up for a college or university program, but not necessarily sure that's what they want to do, or for someone who maybe, say, has been working in a different field for many years and wants to transition over to industrial design. And so really looking for anyone who's trying to break their way in. That's why we call it breaking into design. And next, we have Cohort 2. So Cohort 2 is for when you already have an industrial design background. And that could be for students who maybe have a year or two of industrial design experience, or for professionals who've been working for several years who just want to update their skill set. But we have 7 instructors that teach in a 12-week program as well. And that includes business and design, design for manufacturing, which is my course, professional self-presentation, real-world sketching, design discourse, and product visualization. And so each of these, for example, business and design, teaches you, for example, how to work within a larger organization and understand who those different stakeholders that affect the design process are, but not necessarily are part of the design process, or distinctly as industrial designers. Design for manufacturing, I think, is design for manufacturing, and it speaks for itself. Professional self-presentation teaches you how to basically show your work the best way you can in order to, for example, portfolio building, or how you manage your external brand with the world. Real-world sketching shows you how to take sketching that is actually used every day in industry and not just the pretty pictures you may see online. Design discourse teaches you to think critically about design and actually be able to justify your opinions, and product visualization helps you turn all your work into beautiful renderings. And so here's an example of some of the student work that we have. As you can see, there's it's quite varied everywhere from, you can see everything from strategy to renderings to sketching to actually the type of engineering drawings that we send to factories for quoting. And so this is all part of our online ecosystem that is offsite, which includes not only these courses, but also includes a one-on-one mentorship program. So we pair you with a professional designer in the field. And also we've created an online platform where students can come together and socialize through a virtual studio environment. And it's been really cool to witness the international friendships being made. The most beautiful part of offsite is that we have students from around the world. When I teach, I have students that have flipped their schedule and come in at 3 a.m. and their local time, students where the sun is rising, students where the sun is setting. And so we get to really share and bring these different perspectives together, which is one of my favorite parts of offsite. So now, if you're already familiar with offsite, we can actually kick off the commencement. The first thing we'll start with is some of our instructors have decided to come forward and leave you with some parting notes. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Jack Marple, who is one of the co-instructors of product visualization.
Yeah, hey everyone. Yeah, like Dom said, I'm teaching with Tyler product visualization in Cohort 2. It's been a great ride. This cohort specifically, it's been super fun to see kind of everybody grow and kind of blossom into their into the type of designer that they want to be just in these short 12 weeks. And so it's really cool to see kind of what'll happen after that. So congrats to all of the Cohort 2 and Cohort 1 students. Like this has been a great move for you to be able to take these 12 weeks and invest in yourself and sharpen your skills or learn new skills. And this is kind of the beginning of your journey, which is really exciting. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about expectations in industry. So there's kind of no way to get around it. This is a competitive industry. There's so many people that are like operating at a really high level, perfecting their craft kind of every day. And that's kind of the people that you will be able to work around as you kind of grow in the industry. The more time you spend kind of in product design and product development, you realize that there's like a relatively small group of people who define how our world looks and how it functions. So that's a big responsibility, but it's also kind of a testament to how competitive and how talented the people are that are kind of creating the future. And then, yeah, seeing how you guys have grown over the last 12 weeks, and then I know that if you continue to keep pushing, you'll continue to perfect your craft and you're only going to get better. So a couple of things I want to leave you with as you kind of enter into the industry, a couple of things to think about. The first one is mentorship. Your learning journey kind of doesn't end at your graduation of college or the end of offsite. Like you should continue to learn and continue to find mentorship especially in the first couple of jobs outside of your like academic education, formal academic education. So I think you should use that as a gauge to see should I take this job? Should I not take this job? Is there going to be good mentorship there? Is there a way that you can learn and grow and continue to push yourself forward? So I think that's really important. Keep the learning going. I think another thing is when you get in the door at an agency or a company or at a startup, whatever, be useful. Make yourself invaluable to the team. That's how you're going to stick around. That's how you're going to continue to grow in your position in the design industry. See how you can bring value to support designers above you. Don't be afraid to speak your mind and share your own rationale for the design decisions that you've made. You're a valuable contributor, and show up and kind of bring that value to the teams that you're in. And then continue to push yourself is the last point. As your design practice should continue to evolve as you learn and progress, and kind of perfect your craft. So stay hungry, keep pushing, keep learning, keep challenging yourself with projects or positions or career moves that are going to continue to push yourself and make you feel like you're growing and you're kind of developing yourself as a designer. So those are things I wanted to leave you with. I'm super excited to see where this group of designers go, and all the best in your journeys.
Thank you, Jack. Next up is Kelly of Real World Sketching to talk about attitude and mindset.
Awesome. Thanks, Dom. And thanks, Jack. I couldn't agree more with what you said. It's spot on. So, for those of you who don't already know me, my name is Kelly Custer, and I am the instructor for Real World Sketching. Before we get into it, I want to congratulate all of you, all of our students, for making it through our quite grueling program. I think you would agree with that now that you've been through it. This is a huge achievement, and I want you to be very proud of yourselves, because I know I am very proud of you. So I do have one last mini lesson to share with you. As you go forward, I want you to set your bar high. Okay, and I know that probably sounds cheesy, sounds obvious, but if you haven't already, you're going to soon experience how job hunting and goal chasing in general is going to try its hardest to pressure you into lowering your own bar. Job hunting is very hard, and it's downright disheartening, but you are all very good designers, and you have what it takes to work for very good companies on very good projects. Okay, so I don't want you to end up accepting an opportunity that's below your caliber because you thought you were the only person struggling. So I try to make that actionable for you. So here's what I want you to do. Okay, so when you've heard yet another no, I want you to keep on asking. Or when you once again hear back nothing at all, I want you to keep on applying. When you're feeling not good enough, look back at all the work that you've done so far to get you to where you're at today, and remind yourself that you are really freaking talented. And instead of quitting, ask for help. Okay, you have so many people that would jump at the chance to help you and want to help you succeed. Take everything that you learn from each interview, interaction, or outreach you've had, and work to iteratively improve upon your work and approach. And now I'm not saying to be unrealistic and hold out forever. Okay, I just want you to set your bar a little higher than you think and keep it there longer than feels comfortable. Okay, know that your dream job is out there waiting for you if you're willing to work hard enough and wait long enough for it. All right, so thank you for your commitment to Offsite. It's been a true pleasure working with all of you, and I can't wait to see where you go from here. Back to you, Dom.
Thank you, Kelly. Next up on our list is Spencer Nugent. Spencer?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. You might say it's been an honor, and I'm humbled to be here as a part of this educational experience. One of my favorite things is the first class, getting to meet all of you in a different context, a place I'm not used to being. That is, usually I'm drawing something or teaching other parts of design. For some of you in cohort 1, that meant taking digital tools with me. And for others, that meant being in design discourse. And for me, it was a wonderful experience. And I'm honored to be able to share a few final words with you. I'm going to share those words through the lens of design discourse and share a little mini thought with y'all. In that course, we talk a lot about the idea of truth and perspective, our lived experience, and how that informs who we are and who we want to be. We talked about finding your passion. We've challenged convention, asked uncomfortable questions. Still no fights. I keep hoping for a fight in the class, but no such luck yet. But I'm honored to have been able to spend the time with you and broaden my perspective and learned a bunch as well. So I just want to tell a little story. When I was in college, I had an opportunity for an internship, and it was a 6-week opportunity, which wasn't conventional at the time. And it was with Astro Studios. And, you know, there was a part of me as a student that was thinking, you know, why am I going to do this for 6 weeks? Do I really want to do this? But I sucked it up and I went. I didn't have a desk. I wasn't scheduled as an intern. I just had the chance. And I took that opportunity to humble myself and double down and work hard. And it paid off. I was able to return to Astro Studios later. And that's been a significant opportunity in my career and something that I think changed my life forever. And so I share that to remind you that as you leave this offsite experience with all the knowledge and all the skills that hopefully you've acquired, the connections, the experiences you've had, stay humble. Stay humble. If an opportunity presents itself to you and you have that thought like I did, still take it. Do your best, honor yourself. And by that, I mean, hold yourself to a high standard. Hold yourself to a standard that allows you to invest in yourself, like we talked about in discourse, and to be your best self. And stay true to your word. Part of offsite and part of this experience is that in a true sense, we become family. And I don't mean that in the pejorative colloquial sense that is often used in corporate America, but truly as a part of a small set of students have gone through this experience, you have an opportunity to wear that badge of being a part of offsite. So honor that, honor the experiences you've had, the information you've received, the connections you've fostered, and stay humble as you move forward to the next step, wherever that is. And as one thing I do know from my career is that who you are matters. We talked a lot about that too, being your best self. So who you are matters. And people will remember you if you stay humble and if you're a person of honor. So I just want to leave you with those thoughts. Again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm really excited to see where you go, what you do, and who you all decide you want to be. So I'll turn the time back to Dom. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. All right. And next up, everyone, please put your hands together for Kat Reiser.
Hi, thanks, Dom, for that introduction. To all the alumni out there, hello. Know that this class that's graduating that we're celebrating today, they're coming to join you as alumni and they're bringing immaculate vibes. So get excited to get to know each other a little bit better. It's been really great to add this group to our growing community of offsiters. So some notes on authenticity. We spend a lot of time during the program talking about our identities as emerging or as seasoned designers. All that reflecting is only the beginning. Make it a regular practice to reflect upon your values and how you are upholding them. Find those who share your values and work alongside each other towards a common goal. There is no work more fulfilling. It's important as creatives and also as people to strive to be our most authentic selves rather than copy somebody else. This doesn't just take shape in your identity, but also in your work. It is those differences between us, our experiences, our backgrounds, our personalities, that influence our approaches to design and create a wide range of solutions and visual culture that really starts to texture our world. It has been such an honor to go through this process with all of you. This group has done an amazing job of identifying their individual strengths and finding their unique voices. You as a group have a unique voice collectively as well. And perhaps it was there all along and it just took me like 12 weeks to fully appreciate who each and every one of you is. But either way, I encourage you all as offsite graduates to continue sharing perspectives, speaking your truth, and sketching in your very own style. Know that in doing so, you will attract the eyes of those with similar perspectives, further growing your community and opportunities and impact on our world. You do you. Congratulations.
On my unmute button there. Thank you, Kat. And now, last but not least, Tyler Anderson.
Hey everyone. First off, I just want to say I've been super impressed with the participation of this cohort across assignments and classes, and just being ready and available to tackle whatever we give to you. I know offsite's not super easy. But I want to speak to that eagerness that this cohort has had, and just, express how valuable that trait is as a designer throughout your whole career, right? Your design, I'm going to talk about design more from a skill set side, but whether it's through the more cerebral thinking of design or the hard skills, these design skills are muscles that you have to, work out and exercise. And if you can strengthen them, but if you don't use them, they'll atrophy and they'll get smaller. So I just want to talk briefly about the importance of just remembering to nourish those skills and creativity. Obviously, stepping into offsite proves that you all are aware of this and are, again, eager to nourish those skill sets. But as you go forward in your career and you start to take on more client work and you start to kind of get into the day-to-day grind of design, it can sometimes be easy to forget to take those moments for yourself to personally nourish your skills and creativity in a setting that doesn't have clients, in a setting where you can kind of just focus on finding your own voice and exercising your own voice as a designer. For me, that's been through Render Weekly, but for you, it might be through daily sketching, or it might be through writing about design, or it might be through design discourse with your friends. It could be in a multitude of ways, but remember that design is not just about making money. It's not just about having clients, and make sure to exercise those parts of yourself throughout your careers. And yeah, congratulations, and welcome to the Offsite alumni community. Back to you, Dom.
Tyler. It's not about the money, but everyone do try to make money when you can.
Money's nice. Yeah, I will say it helps life to an
It is
extent.
nice. All right. So now thank you, instructors, for those wonderful words. Next, we'll be presenting our student speaker for the year, or for the cohort, I suppose, Dan Nguyen.
Yeah, hey everyone. If you haven't met yet, I'm Dan. It's my honor to share my offsite experience with you. And I was lucky enough to go through actually both Cohort 1 and Cohort 2. So here's a little bit about my story. So I grew up in the SF Bay Area, and I'm actually still here right now. I really enjoy the outdoors, and I try to go hiking and backpacking as often as I can. And I don't have a background in design. I studied psychology and public health. So how did I end up where I am now, having just finished Cohort 2 and continuing to pursue a career in industrial design? I was working as a program manager in the UX research operations space, and I was supporting logistics for researchers across a bunch of different teams and products. Long story short, I got pretty burnt out with the type of work that I was doing. I joined the research space because it was a nice intersection between my background in psychology and my interest in design. But working more on the operations side, a lot of my work turned into spreadsheets and calendaring, and it just sort of wasn't the engaging hands-on design that I wanted to be doing. I really needed a change. So doing a little bit of soul searching and research, I discovered ID. It really sparked my curiosity. Again, I was always drawn more to the design side and wanted a more hands-on experience, and ID seemed to be that perfect fit for me. So I connected with a friend over coffee who actually is an industrial designer, and he mentioned that he knew some cool people who were teaching classes in a program called Offsite. So this felt like the perfect opportunity for me because as someone coming from outside the world of design, it was hard for me to see a clear path across the gap. And Offsite helped me understand that there was a way across. And Cohort 1 earlier in the spring was my first step at bridging that gap. And I'll share a little bit about that experience. So in her CMF class, Becca showed us how to pull inspiration from the world around us to create something that would not only solve a problem, but would also be in harmony with current cultural shifts and emotions. In methodologies, Kat shared with us so many different strategies for ideating and pressure testing our concepts. Through group collaboration, we learned to lean on each other to bounce ideas and develop unique solutions. Spencer and Hector taught us prototyping and sketching skills to get ideas from inside our heads out into the world. Quickly getting sketches on paper or prototypes made from foam, rather than keeping everything in our heads, helped us to work through feature designs and tough concepts. So Cohort 1 started to build the groundwork for me to make my way across that gap. But I still felt like I still had some distance between me and ID. So for myself, I decided that Cohort 2 was the next best step to continue pivoting into ID. So I'll share a little bit about that experience. In Kelly's real world sketching class, we learned how to identify and understand our audience and how to communicate with them using the most effective sketching methods. The concept of go time versus grow time really helped us to know when to utilize different sketching tools so we could focus our time wisely and really communicate our ideas. Dom taught us about the cascading business and environmental impacts of choosing certain materials and different manufacturing processes, and how those decisions can influence the design process, even for something as simple as a trash can. In Spencer's digital tools class, which is actually a newly added Cohort 1 class that I took this time around, I started my CAD journey and learned that there might be like 10 different ways to do something in CAD, but planning ahead and staying organized early on will save a ton of time down the road. And then with Jack and Tyler, we learned how to bring our ideas to life using Keyshot through composition, materials, and lighting to just clearly communicate our concepts. Definitely got to keep in mind that lighting is everything for getting those really sweet renders. Kat taught us how to write a better story about ourselves by first understanding our own vibes and values. We learned that being ourselves and expressing that uniqueness in our portfolio and work is one of the secret ingredients for becoming a better designer. From Michael, we learned how industrial design fits into a larger business system and how to position ourselves for success within scenarios within that system. So we learned about the importance of visual brand language and how much it can communicate a brand's values. And lastly, I really can't forget just another major source of learning and growth for me, which came from being inspired by all of this community's work in progress. Coming from outside the design world, it was really valuable for me to see all these different styles and approaches to design as I continue to try and figure out my own. So having just finished Cohort 2, I feel like I've bridged that gap and gotten that much closer to my goal of a career in industrial design. There's definitely still a lot of progress for me to make, but thanks to Offsite, there isn't this mysterious canyon in between me and my goals anymore. So through my experience with Offsite and Cohort 1 and Cohort 2, it's really changed who I am for the better. So before Offsite, I didn't know the value of industrial design. But now I know that industrial designers have this unique superpower to create solutions that really consider the entire user experience. And they communicate these ideas to so many different people in so many different ways, and they strive to make that solution a reality. Before Offsite, I was so nervous about sketching. or even just like communicating visually. I just didn't consider myself someone who could draw. But now I really understand that it's not all about making hot sketches. Sketching, CAD, renders, prototyping, they're all just sort of these valuable tools in my toolkit. And the goal is not to communicate an idea, or sorry, the goal is to communicate an idea, not to make something flashy. And I wasn't very confident in the ideas that I came up with. But now learning everything that I know, similar to hot sketches, it's not always about the coolest idea, but rather about a concept that tells a meaningful story and something that can sort of quietly and seamlessly solve a problem. And feedback was scary for me. So before Offsite, I was someone who was always nervous about getting feedback. But now I understand that feedback is precious. I received so much feedback and support from the Offsite community, and I really couldn't have made it this far without it. Your guidance has really expanded my perspectives and pushed my thinking in directions that I really wouldn't have tread on my own. With that, I want to thank everyone in the Offsite community for this experience. And a special shout out to my mentor, Monica, for her guidance and for teaching me all about the world of soft goods. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I've grown so much thanks to Offsite. I'm grateful for the opportunity to bridge that gap, and to everyone for making the space for me to join you on this journey. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Tom.
Thanks a lot, Dan. That was very beautifully said. All right, so now we will be jumping into our professional speaker series, where I would like to introduce Jalen Igber. So Jalen is an industrial designer based in Oakland and Los Angeles, which are in the states of California, if you're unfamiliar. He's on Logitech's global ID team, where he's working on new product innovations and ecosystems for their education group and their brand collaborations group. So prior to joining the in-house team at Logitech, Jalen has stints at consultancies such as SO Design, or SO Design, I'm actually not quite sure how to say it, London-based design firm, native design and branding agency Lander & Fitch. Over the course of his career, he's been blessed with the opportunity to work on great teams delivering products that resonate with people. His work has been featured in Core 77, Yanko Design, Le Manouche, SF San Francisco Chronicle, and currently being used by the Golden State Warriors. That's pretty cool. Jalen holds a design patent and utility patent from his work at Logitech. His most recent release was on the Logic Pen, a Chromebook stylus that arose from a partnership between Google and Logitech for education. His personal anchor points as a designer are to bring poetry to products and innovation to the masses, and he holds a strong conviction that products have as much responsibility to shift culture as they do to solve problems. All right, Jalen, you are up.
Sweet. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dan. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you stop sharing your screen so I can share mine? Thank you. Can you guys see that? Okay, see head nods. So I'm going to dive right into it. Only about 10 minutes here. I want to give space for the other speakers. So Offsite Keynote 2022, basically visual context of the intro that Dan just mentioned, and I'm going to rip through this in about 30 seconds because I only have 10 minutes. My name is Jalen, I work at Logitech. This is the work I did, some of the work I did in Native for Baxter, major medical pharmaceutical company. Worked at Landor, a branding agency, worked with these brands. You might recognize some of those brands, cool brands. Now I work at Logitech here, which is pushing culture forward through computer peripherals and human performance. Now, going into the actual speech, congratulations, you guys. A lot of hard work, great testimonial from Dan. I would say, you began your journey with Offsite, but in a real sense, it's really the preamble of the prologue. Now, after leaving this course, this is where the real journey begins. For this talk, I'm going to go through some insights that were given to me. Then I'll go into the core idea of the talk and then some exemplars that kind of expound upon the core idea, but actually pull from the insights that were given to me. So the insights may seem kind of disparate at first, but it all come together. So the first insight, you're only as good as the obscurity of your sources. Don't stop at Pinterest or Design Burger for your inspiration. Go to a museum. I was fortunate enough to kind of have heard this in 2016, 2017, not this book because Design Burger didn't exist yet, but the obscurity of the sources in 2016, 2017 from a creative director of mine at Native. And ever since then, I've made the point to actually go to museums and kind of immerse myself in like the art and the sculpture. This is actually a picture I took at the Legion of Honor in San Francisco. It's from Adam Pinnaker, painter from the 17th century. You can see that in 1640. What's great about this is not just the obscure sources, but also you learn a lot actually about some of the fundamental tenets that we now apply in our kind of modern skill set and tool set. So you learn a lot about lighting, composition, contrast. I would bet a lot of the more successful renders, and I'm sure Tyler can speak to this, a lot of the more successful renders you see online or on Render Weekly or Design Burger, they actually have a great control of these kind of classical principles about lighting and composition. Let me just, and here's another video I took from the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. This was basically a set of pottery from an indigenous tribe in Northern Colombia. So that tribe still exists. And so the museum actually worked with them to create these new pieces. So these are current pieces, but that have thousands of years of kind of cultural significance and just a conversation about form and proportion and dialogue. I'm going back to kind of pre-industrial era, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But in terms of the obscurity of your sources, these going to museum is a great way to kind of immerse yourself in the source material that other people aren't necessarily looking towards. The second insight, fresh work is less about an epiphany from the sky and even less about talent and more the result about being immersed in the history of your craft. And I know that's controversial, but this was heavily inspired by Quincy Jones. So basically, if you don't know who he is, he's a music producer, worked on Michael Jackson's Thriller, 20-time Grammy Award winner. Basically, he had this great article in Vulture, 2016, 2017, where he said John Coltrane, who was a legendary jazz musician who he knew and worked with, was heavily inspired by Nicholas Slonimsky, to the point where every time Coltrane would do a show, he would be seen with like Slonimsky's book under his arm. And Quincy Jones even went so far as to say that like a lot of Coltrane's best work, you can actually find the seeds of it in Slonimsky's book. It wasn't plagiarism because it wasn't passing off Slonimsky's work as his own. But again, this notion of being immersed in the history of your craft, he was very, very familiar with Slonimsky. Slonimsky is a 18th century composer, and so that was something that really put the seed in my head. And around the same time, this is from Tim Zarki. Some of you guys know who he is. If you don't, he's a great visual designer, a visualizer. He worked with, I guess you'd call kind of the alpha version of Offsite with the Square One conferences. He had these great decks around visualization and around art and creative direction. One of the things from his deck that stuck with me that I saw around the same time as that Quincy Jones article was that, if you want to create something fresh, take an idea that inspires you and then pull from a completely disparate source to create something new. And so seeing that blueprint, in such rapid succession, and then seeing it as I continue to immerse myself in design and in music, that was something that really stuck with me in terms of immersing yourself in the history of the craft. See the world through the lens of a creator as opposed to a mere consumer or critic. This third insight, and the last one before I go into the core idea. This was actually heavily inspired by Damian Lillard. I was an athlete in high school. I still consider industrial design to be a sport. He had this fascinating quote: if you want to look good in front of thousands, you have to outwork thousands in front of nobody. And for me, what that really sent home was that, when you see Damian Lillard do a move on the court, when you see Steph Curry do a move on the court, when you listen to a Drake song, here is pictured Noah Shabib. He's a producer and co-founder of Drake's label OVO. Don't listen to it the same way 85-90% of the world does in terms of, oh, I like this. Oh, this reminds me of my girlfriend, or, oh, this is good to dance to. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you perceive these things through the lens of a creator, so for instance, when you see a move Steph Curry does on the court, just think, how many hours did it take to the point where he would be comfortable enough to do this in a game? Or when you listen to a song, and I pull heavily from music because for me personally, music and music theory has been a great inspiration in my own journey as an industrial designer. I actually find the process of crafting a good song to be one-to-one analogous of crafting a good product. When you listen to a song, just think, how many hours did it take for them to refine this to the point where they could actually release this? And in the case of, hip hop or even rock or other genres where you're sampling music, how many hours of research did it take for them to even find the source material, then implement the source material where it's not plagiarism, and then go through the iteration process and kind of release it, right? And so seeing the world through the lens of a creator, for me, it's been a great shift in my journey as a designer. And I'm going to go to this quick video here just to kind of answer that question I was talking about, how many hours did it take? This is actually a clip from one of the sound engineers at OBO Sound.
The very last drop of your energy in your body. How do we get to that point?
When we're close to delivering a project, I'm up for 4 days because I have to. And whoever is in that room with me, whether it be Drake or an intern that we have, is also up for those 4 days. And you have to be able to endure. And then the other thing is work ethic. You have to work as hard or harder than I am.
4 days straight. And I'm not here to talk about work-life balance or whether that's good or bad. I'm here to talk about work ethic, but again, just the notion of the amount of work and the maniacal amount of commitment it takes to produce excellent work. When you see the world through the lens of a creator, you start to see these things and appreciate these things differently. And so going to kind of my main point, basically Johnny Ive, he actually applied a lot of these principles we talked about. He sampled effectively kind of the Brown series or the Brown design language and applied it to computers and consumer tech. And it was great. It was revolutionary. However, for me, it's fascinating that, this came out in 2007. It's fascinating that for like 12 to 15 years, the industry hasn't really progressed beyond that aesthetic or that approach of kind of the Ramsey Bauhausian approach. The reason I say this is, this is a quote from Jason Maiden. If you don't know who he is, look him up. As one of the most, I would say he's one of the most brilliant creators of our generation. I think he's worked with Hector. I've seen them on IG going back and forth a little bit. There's this great quote, intention, place, and context is great design. And so, I'm not knocking Rams or Johnny Ive at all. I think, again, they've done great. We're all here because of them. But for me, when I'm seeing portfolios of Logitech or when young kids reach out to me on LinkedIn to do portfolio reviews, I'm seeing kind of the same tenets. I'm seeing the same kind of 10 principles of good design. It's got to be simple. It's got to be pure form, all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But when asked about the reason for it, when interrogated about, what was the decision matrix to go in this approach, this direction, you don't actually get an answer. You just get the definition of the term. Like, why was it simple? Oh, it was simple because it needed to be easy to use. As opposed to, I went through this rigorous kind of set of trade-offs, and this ended up being the best for the user experience. So I would say that kind of the future of design, you'll actually see more of this. You'll actually see more intentionality in design approach, but actually pulled from culture and ethnography. And so to kind of wrap up in my last minute here, just going through these examples that are kind of expound upon this and actually pull from the earlier things we talked about. This is a work of Lucas Cotto. He works with a buddy of mine at Microsoft. These are a set of water filters, heavily inspired by Brazilian clay filters. Obviously you see some of the simplicity in geometry, but we actually go through the project, you can look at on Behance, there's a fresh take on actually how clay filters work and the mechanism of it. This is a work of Matt Collins. You don't know who he is. Rock star designer in the UK, winning a ton of awards. In my last 30 seconds here, this was a set of chairs inspired by the Iklawa tribe in Africa. And so you see here kind of the example of that first principle, right? Pulling from the obscure source. I don't know how many of you even knew about the Iklawa tribe before this talk. Maybe a bunch of you did. I don't want to be ignorant, but for me, when I saw this, I'd never even heard of it. And you see also the example of that third point of taking something, a chair, pulling from a disparate source, the throne of a Iklawa tribe to create something fresh. And then lastly, to this point, there's a whole dialogue and conversation about form and proportion that isn't fully encapsulated in kind of the Ramsian or Bauhausian approach. And not to say that those things are wrong, but again, the beautiful thing about diversity and dialogue is that we're able to kind of push these things forward. And lastly, I'm going a few seconds over. This is a work from Hussein Al-Masawi. This is actually not what he's best known for. He's actually worked with Damian Lillard. He's a great visualizer, worked at Nike. But this is actually an AI-generated Japanese kimono. And it's interesting that like in all the AI generated work I've seen, he was the only one who kind of rooted it back to kind of an object of cultural significance. And, so you can compare this to kind of the kimonos that are out there right now. But, this I think is a great example of where the industry is going. The metaverse and the algorithms, they're going to be there and they're going to be necessary. They're going to be used. But I think there's a lot to be said from pulling from culture ethnography to kind of push things forward. And the beautiful thing about this group, being from all over the world and from all these different cultures, is that you guys going into the world, you'll be able to do things that a lot of people in the industry aren't able to do right now. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jalen. That was a very refreshing perspective. Our next speaker in our series is Brittany Perrione. So everyone, Brittany is an industrial designer based in LA with a passion for people as much as product. Her story began in Beaverton, Oregon at the Nike World headquarters as a footwear designer working in women's training, golf, running, and cleated sports. She found herself quitting her role for travel abroad and to work with women and children before returning to the States to settle in LA and continuing to design. In recent years or experience, she has been Jerry Lorenzo's footwear / accessories designer at Fear of God, design director at James Purse, and is an active team member helping develop Justin Bieber's new brand, Skylark. She is a proud founder of the design conglomerate Proof of Concept, which is a purpose-driven product company in its infancy stages. And she's looking to bring functional minimalism to everyday products while raising funding to incubate creative talent. Brittany, the floor is yours.
My mic there was muted. Thank you for having me. It's stoked to be here, and my design history has kind of been a little bit more in the fashion and footwear space, and so I just kind of wanted to share some thoughts that I've kind of collected along the way. Hopefully they apply to your next phase of your journey. Congrats on graduating from this program, and also it's a big credit to your intentionality to get better at design. So a couple of things I've noticed along my personal path and then working under some cool creatives in the industry is this idea of being unapologetically prolific. And I think in design, like, we are so metered or measured, in a process. And a lot of times it's about just being super prolific and then like editing. And so if you go to the next slide, I think that people think that process or growth or design is like this kind of like linear thing. And really it's actually like this kind of chaotic mess. And from this, you learn how to just grow as a designer without being, concerned about sticking to a plan. So for example, I started my career at Nike designing shoes, and I thought that was like all that I wanted to ever do. And I was there for 4 years, and then I ended up quitting my job and leaving and going to Africa to work with women and children and do some soul searching. And then I just ended up back in LA designing. And so you have to kind of give yourself that space and that grace to follow your heart while you're also, pursuing your career. And so I want to just kind of like pass that along. And then secondly, this idea, you can go to the next slide, is like paralysis by analysis is something my pole vault coach used to always say. And a lot of times it's like we want to sit in our decision-making process in design, and you end up in a space of paralysis instead of just being prolific. And so this idea of designing sans precious, right? Like, don't be precious with your process. And I say this because I'm like super guilty of it, and that's why I wanted to pass it along. And I see that, my latest role has been under Jerry Lorenzo of Fear of God. And he, for those of you that know him, you can stay on the other slide. For those of you that know him, he comes across very edited, but his process is he will change directions like literally all the time. And that really kind of helped me realize, like, wow, just because you start a project with a certain intention doesn't mean that you have to like stay in that lane. You can like depart from it. Granted, you probably shouldn't do that too much because there's deadlines and accountability and partners involved. But I think it's important to understand that, like, a lot of times, like, I don't know how many of you feel this way, but like right now, probably when you put pen to paper, you have like your taste level and it's like, it's over here, but then you have the output of the design work that you're actually doing, and you see kind of like this delta. And like on the screen, I've called it out as like, you're here, and this is like where you want to be. And that could be in your career, that could be in taste, that could be in your average Monday morning. But the only way to close this delta or this gap is to be prolific and to be iterative in your projects, not just within a project, but do multiple projects, because you know, you kind of learn new things with every project. You don't need to beat like a dead horse and keep cycling back around on the same project. Just keep making new ideas, new stuff, stay inspired, stay on top of coming up with just new thoughts, right? So then if you go to the next slide, the whole notion, right, of this whole idea is to get to this idea of taste. And I think that's something that is not taught in design schools. I'm not sure if it's something that's touched upon at Offsite, but it's really what sets you apart in the industry, because at the end of the day, every single person on this Zoom is talented. Every single one of you has a skill set. So all of you could be competing for the same job and all be equally qualified. However, your taste level or your perspective or the way that you see the world, your sensibility around proportion, your sensibility around color, material, finish, is really what begins to set you apart. And where that becomes lethal is it develops you into a brand in and of yourself, right? So people want to work with you because of your sense of taste, not just because you can execute a project, but because you're known for a certain echelon or a certain point of view that then becomes this brand, right? So like we buy Apple, we're willing to pay $1,200 for a phone because we buy into the brand of Apple. You know, you'll spend $250 on a pair of Nikes because of the swoosh. You probably don't really actually care how well the shoe performs. It just looks fly. Same thing with Fear of God. It's like there's a $2,000 sport coat, but you could also go to Zara and get the same thing. So if you can add value to yourself, where you start developing yourself into this brand, which is where you become more of a mogul, that's where actually the revenue comes in and you start making a lot more money, because you transcend the W-2 space. You transcend being an employee. You transcend being just even a team member. You always want to be a team member, but you want, you know, if this is PE and we're picking dodgeball teams, you want to be the person that's like, this is my first pick. And how do you become that? That's really around this idea of like brand, which really comes down to, for us, taste as designers and as creatives. And so between that and this idea of being prolific, right? Prolific is kind of the backstory. It's kind of the context. It's kind of the like, the preparation to get to this platform of taste. And that requires time. And that is also the thing that I really wanted to heavily relay is like, give yourself so much grace. That's something I remind myself of every day is like, I've had a lot of cool jobs, and I'm very grateful for them, but I'm still very hard on myself because I'm like, I have a certain level of expectation. At the end of the day, you can't sub out experience. You just can't. So like relax in that experience of like, okay, I'm going to do this job for 2 years, and then I'm going to do this job for 2 years, and then I'm going to do this job for 2 years. And now it's finally 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, however long it goes. And you've given yourself the space and the grace to grow in each of those experiences. Then you start to get to this platform that is this branded image that people are like, wow, I really want that person, you know, on my team. You look at creative directors in fashion, you know, Demna's at Balenciaga now, and it's like, or Marc Jacobs or Raf Simons, all these guys have moved around in the fashion space because of the brand of who they are as creative directors. And so I think industrial designers in general are a little behind the curve in this like thinking, because we're so process driven and we're so research based, and a lot of times academia in general, which I think is amazing that there's a program like this, academia in general is a bit archaic in its like thinking. And so again, this notion of like basically branding yourself, marketing yourself, and it's all rooted in taste, which is rooted in being prolific, will kind of take you to the next level where you're pushing, maybe you make $250,000 a year instead of 80K because of that. And that's where things little light bulbs start to go on, that it does matter how you carry yourself, like going back to the honor notion that Spencer spoke about. And then again, just this lens. What is your lens? When people when they hear your name, what type of work are they going to get from you? Can they look at your Instagram? Can they look through your portfolio and they're like, oh, I catch a vibe. What is that vibe? And that is rooted in actual credited work. It's rooted in actual design. It's not hype. So yeah, I think like that's kind of the thing that I've watched, and there's a pendulum of that, right? There's like, there's people that are just fluff and have so successfully branded themselves that like they go in and they literally do no work, but they're so well branded that people are like, oh, they must be important. They must be, the ultimate teammate. And I'm just saying, build the brand, but build it, on a series of credits and work. But also understand the significance of that, because you're going to move in the game at a different level once that's intact. And again, that's all rooted in taste for designers. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brittany. And great. And now to our final speaker, we have Anson Chung. Anson is a designer based in San Francisco. He was formerly a partner at Bold Design, where he worked on bringing technology products to life. Anson earned his BFA from Rhode Island School of Design and has 10 years of professional experience in the field of industrial design. His work has won several industry awards and includes designs for category-defining brands such as R0, Roku, Intuitive Surgical, and Hunter Douglas. At Bold Design, he drives the strategic development, marketing, and operations of the studio, in addition to leading creative teams. In his free time, he's a photographer and avid cook with a special fascination for ramen. Anson also volunteers as a leader on the Industrial Designers Society of America's Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion Council. All right. So without further ado, everyone, please give, a virtual round of applause for Anson. And I will allow you to share your screen.
Thanks, Dom. Can everyone see this okay?
Yep.
Cool. So congratulations to everyone who is graduating from the Offsite program today. And the theme of my talk is going to be Know Your Value, because I believe that industrial design, being an industrial designer, is one of the most valuable and impactful positions that you can occupy in the process of developing products and making things for people. So going into some of the work that I've done, I've had the opportunity to work on a wide variety of products, from this crazy 16 lens computational camera to a UV disinfection device that was developed during the pandemic to help with cleaning our everyday spaces, to window shades for Hunter Douglas that go in many people's homes. I love walking into people's houses and just seeing these shades on the windows. And most recently, I've even worked on a autonomous restaurant that is powered by robotics and recently launched in San Francisco. You can actually go eat here. So what I've learned through designing all of these things is that you can really design anything as an industrial designer if you know and can convey your value. And there is some confusion about that. One thing that all of you will learn or have already experienced is that pretty much no one outside of our field knows what industrial design is. So what I tell people is that you should really have a good one-liner for parties because you're going to be asked, what is industrial design? And when you say industrial design, this is probably what people are going to think of, some sort of factory, industrial setting, designing heavy equipment or something like that. which is certainly part of what we do as industrial designers, but that's not the full picture. And for my one-liner, I've recently actually stolen Michael DiTullo's great analogy, which is being an architect is to buildings as being an industrial designer is to products. So I think that's a really great one that you can borrow as well. So as you start to develop your professional careers, if you're not careful about articulating what your value is as a designer, you can fall into what I call the make it pretty trap, where when you work with clients or business people who don't understand the value of design, they can put you in a box where you are simply the cherry on top, and they bake the cake and you put the cherry on top. And I think we all know as industrial designers that our value to product development is far beyond just making it pretty, but you need to be able to convey that to people. So what is the value of industrial design? That is a question that is hard to answer, but there has been some research done by McKinsey & Company in 2018. McKinsey is one of the biggest consulting companies in the world, and they basically did a study of over 300 companies, and they found that those that were design focused, those that integrated design as a top level strategy and broke down internal barriers and integrated design across all disciplines to drive a user-focused experience for their customers, they could outperform their industry benchmarks by almost 2-to-1 financially. And design isn't all about money, but money can be a good indicator of value and the impact that design can have. So 2-to-1 is pretty amazing. So if you're a design focused company, you could be having twice as much impact as a company that sees design as making things pretty. So that's really important for all of us as industrial designers to know, because if we're confident about that impact and we're able to articulate that to people that work with us, that's when we can have our greatest impact on the world around us. So I think the true value of industrial design is really the ability to integrate across disciplines to create impactful, user-centric solutions to hard problems. And I think we all know that there are a lot of hard problems coming up in our world. From a couple of examples here, automation and AI, climate change, inequity on all fronts in society. Not all of these problems are going to have product solutions, but many of them might, because we are physical beings and we live in the physical world, at least for now. And you, as designers stepping into the industry, are going to have a chance to impact some of these big problems. But it starts with you being confident in what your value is and being able to talk to other people about it. So how do you exercise your value? How do you get to a point where you can be doing work at the highest impact level? I have 5 things that that I'd like to leave with you to think about. Number 1 is having a growth mindset. And having a growth mindset really just means believing that you can grow to meet any challenge that comes your way. I have a friend who likes to tell his kids, if you believe you can't, you're right. And if you believe you can, you might. And I think that's really great, because in my experience as an industrial designer, I've faced so many different challenges, and I've found that just being able to deploy some level of Google foo and having a good problem-solving attitude means that you can really grow to meet any challenge. And I hope you guys take that with you and continue to grow in your careers. The second thing that I would recommend you do is skill up. And you have all demonstrated that you're capable and willing to do that by going through this offsite program. The more skills you can be fluent in, the easier it is to execute your vision. And you can really keep adding skills to your toolkit throughout your career, and there's no limit to the number of things that you can be fluent in. So continue to add things to your toolkit and learn and grow. The third thing that I'll leave you with is build bridges. Industrial design is really a great integrator between disciplines. And you'll often find that you're in the middle between all of these different areas and fields of practice. And instead of being siloed or antagonistic towards other disciplines, help to build bridges between them and build trust. And in that way, you'll be able to embrace that interdisciplinary nature of design and execute at the highest level of impact. Number 4 is chase your curiosity. I've had the chance to work on a lot of design projects, but I've also embraced a lot of things outside of design just because I was interested in them or there was an opportunity to learn in another field. For example, I have, maybe it's a little bit odd as a designer, but I have a weird interest in spreadsheets and databases, and I learned a lot about that just because I was interested in it, and it actually helped me to run a design business. It helped me to run a design firm, I think more effectively than I would have without that skill set. So embrace things outside of design and really just explore whatever you're curious in, because you never know when it might come back around to help you in your design career. And there's a quote here that we might all be familiar with: a jack of all trades is a master of none. But I've recently been told that there's a second part that we don't really often hear, and it's but oftentimes better than a master of one. And I think this really sums up industrial design in one quote. We are these jack of all trades, and that's really our strength. And following your curiosity and being able to expose yourself to new things is only going to add to that. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is to take care. Industrial design and design and creative work in general is tough. You put a lot of yourself into it. There's a prevalent culture of suffering for your craft that I think we have to be aware of and collectively fight against in order to create a healthy balance of being creative, but also taking care of ourselves. And the final quote that I'll leave you with is, "The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long." Really think about your career as a long game and don't burn out early on, and take the time to recharge and take care of yourself, and make sure you're thinking about things as a long-term game and not trying to put everything in all at once up front and not making it very long. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you for listening to my talk.
Thank you very much, Anson. It was very interesting how the quote about being a jack of all trades actually completely changes its meaning out of context. Alrighty. Well, everyone, that wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, our 5th commencement ceremony. Again, big congratulations to everyone. We really couldn't have done this without you, the students, and we'd also like to thank all of our mentors who gave their time and energy to help work with our students one-on-one. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to our educators, and thank you to the speakers who have come today. And last but not least, we'd also like to thank the internal advanced design team for helping put this together and try and make everything possible. So special shout out goes to Hector, Tiffany, Bethany, and Betwell, and to our experienced team of FIBA and Chris. So it takes a lot of people to make this whole thing work. As you can see, even just putting together a commencement ceremony takes quite a few people. And we couldn't thank you enough for helping us out. And one last thing is we have a few announcements to make. We are dropping Offsite Electives, which are a 10-week long individual courses. So instead of doing say 6 courses or 4 courses, you can pick and choose your own singular courses that you'd like to do. They're designed to be supplemental to your design education and not necessarily essential pieces, but kind of a deeper dive into different topics. And so we're starting with 4 course offerings, which I believe the sign up for them ends tomorrow. So number 1 is CMF, or color and material finish, from forecasting to finishes. Sites, running on cargo, where you learn how to make your own website. Form and human function and unblock, and how UX opens up ID pathways, with many more to come. This is just our first offering, and we're hoping to build out the program a bit more. So you can take 1, 2, 3, or all 4. Basically, your design education is in your hands. Another exciting announcement coming up very shortly, actually in 2 weeks, which has me kind of nervous now, being on the internal team. We are excited to announce our annual design conference, Square One, which will be back in person for the first time in 2 years. We'll be celebrating our 5th anniversary of Square One this year, with the whole identity of the conference revolving around the idea of connect. So that's reconnecting again after 2 years of hard pandemic. So this year we're going to hopefully push Square One to the next level. We'll have a lot of talks, panels from industry leaders. There will be tons of opportunities for networking. So again, the first time that you'll probably be able to do so in a long time. We'll be featuring designer work, and this will all be taking place in Chicago's energetic and internationally renowned Fulton Market. So this will be taking place on October 6th to 7th in Chicago. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it should be a bit earlier, 3rd to 5th, and we'll see you there. And lastly, during that time, a week after, not a week after, but several days after, we'll be having our first Offsite Global Reunion, where everyone is invited to come if you are former Offsite alumni. So if anyone is in town for Square One that is also an Offsite alumnus, come meet all your virtual friends in person. And here's some small Offsite meetups that we've had throughout the years. We hope that this one is going to be our biggest and best yet. And as a final note, follow Offsite, follow Advanced Design, keep up with our developments. Offsite is a living, breathing animal, and so things will be changing all the time with new additions, new offerings, and new growth. And so we hope to see you again soon. So that said, bye. It's been a wonderful 12 weeks, and just because we are done with our Offsite cohort doesn't mean we are done with you. So stay in touch, and we look forward to seeing where you go. That's all. So see you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.